Oftentimes, couples get stuck in communication patterns that seem to go nowhere. They complain that they need help communicating and that their partner doesn't understand them, and that they struggle to communicate in ways where they both feel heard themselves. Moreover, couples often don't realize that the initial triggers that create the ruptures in the first place, which usually start as something small and insignificant like discussing kids' schedules or dirty dishes in the sink, are not because of the words they're saying to one another, but rather they perceive something more fundamental happening in the relationship, something that is unfolding right before their eyes, and yet they struggle to see. Now, that's what we're going to talk about today, reflecting on the present process. Let's get started.
Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast that provides support and guidance to help heal the wounds of attachment trauma. Whether you find yourself struggling with unresolved issues in the past or have experienced trauma in your current relationship, our goal is to provide accurate, scientifically informed information, as well as the tools to help you create a secure connection between you and your partner. And here's your host, Tom Philby.
All right. Research demonstrates that 67% of communication between couples is nonverbal. That means that most of our communication breakdowns are not tied to our partner's words, but rather to their tone of voice, their facial expressions, or their lack of validation of something that we have said. The right hemisphere of our brain is largely nonverbal, but it is hugely symbolic. Picking up communication of these nonverbal messages is the right hemisphere's job, and it's very good at it. The right hemisphere is also closely tied to the amygdala, which is the emotional center of our brain. When we put these two functions together, we are taking in far more information from our partner than what we are actually putting or processing in words. What this means is that we are often getting triggered and reacting to our partner, not because of the words they say, but rather because of how we are interpreting their nonverbal cues. The grimace on their face that sends the message they don't like what we've said, and we feel abandoned. The tone of voice that is rejecting, dismissing, or humiliating. These are often the real reasons couples get bogged down in communicating with one another. And those with past trauma, past hurts and wounds are more likely to interpret their partner's nonverbal cues as danger signals to being re-traumatized. Because unresolved trauma creates a radar that is looking for any little blip on the screen that may cause harm or danger to the self. This is part of how trauma tries to protect us. It creates an invisible force field that we have around us and in our environment, and we pick up on the smallest little cues coming from others that might tell us we are in harm's way. And it could be a squinting of the eyes, a grimace of the face, a furrowing of the brows. It could be a tone of voice. It could be folded arms that might say, I'm upset with you, or you've said something I dislike. Those are all nonverbal signals that are being processed by our right hemisphere and shooting down to our emotional centers. And our bodies become attuned to those nonverbal cues, while what we think we're most taking in and listening to are the words that person is saying. And yet what's happening is our body is responding to those nonverbals constantly and processing constantly what is happening in those interactions. Those interactions might come from a colleague at work. They might come from a best friend. And of course, they could certainly come from your romantic partner, significant other, or spouse. This is the essence of anxious attachment. This radar I'm talking about, this is essentially what is created internally in those who are afflicted with anxious attachment. Those who have this style of attachment are constantly paying attention to any little blip, as I said on the screen, that they might need to address with their partner so that they don't get caught off guard and hurt again. And since anxious partners usually get together with avoidant partners, this can be a recipe for miscommunication, in part because the avoidant partner is not monitoring for any blips and therefore often doesn't see any issues until their partner brings them up. Now, you can imagine how this creates a certain responsibility on the anxious partner to be able to not only see and note any danger cues that might be going on in the relationship, but they can begin to then feel like they're the only one that's fighting for the relationship, the only one that is bringing things up in the relationship. And it's not because they are more sensitive, although in some ways they are, but it is because they see those danger cues and they interpret them as danger cues far more often than avoidance do. Avoidance tend to dismiss danger cues. They tend to compartmentalize. And if they do see them, they are going to probably just internalize them and not say anything for fear of making it worse. And this is the essence of the cycles that couples can get caught up in that I've talked about many times on this channel. So the question is, what can we do about this? How do we help ourselves in our relationships communicate better? Well, among the many techniques I've talked about on this podcast, the one I've never mentioned is what's called reflecting present process. Reflecting present process is being able to notice what is happening in the interaction between you and your partner while it's happening. And I'm emphasizing while there, meaning that you are able to notice that this process of communication between you and your partner has gone awry as it is going awry. Not 30 minutes after the fight, not after we've dug ourselves into a deep hole and feel stuck, but it's beginning to notice and see that something's off here, something's taken a turn in our interaction that feels uncomfortable. It's kind of like having a third eye that is observing the interaction while it is happening and is being able to notice when things go awry. This is a skill like any other, but I would rank it right up there with emotion regulation and understanding your attachment style as some of the most important skills couples can learn. But the difficulty in learning this skill is learning how to recognize it in the moment when it is happening and not getting so caught up in the interactions, in the words that you and your partner are saying to one another, to not be able to notice what is unfolding in front of you. Now, as therapists, I can tell you this is one of our greatest strengths. When we are able to point out how couples get triggered in the moment, or how they interpret their partner in the moment, or how they rupture their connection together in the moment. When we can capture what is happening in real time with our couples, then those can be the greatest teaching moments for our couples. It's what we call in vivo learning or live in the moment learning. And I can tell you when I've got a couple sitting on the couch and they begin to have a rupture, I can jump in and stop it because I can notice and see what is unfolding in the moment. It's a little like I'm listening to not only the words they're saying, but I'm also really listening to what is happening and playing out non-verbally. What is their tone of voice? What is their body posture? Do I see one partner looking down when another partner says something? Do I see another partner turning away from their partner with even just their head or their eyes? These little things are all cues that something is unfolding in the present moment for couples. And when I can capture, almost like a picture, when I can take a picture of what's happening and I can turn it around and show it to the couple, I can say, look, Notice how you folded your arms in this moment, and notice your partner, how he looked down and away. What do you think was unfolding there? What was happening for the two of you? I don't literally show them pictures, but it's almost like a still frame. I wish sometimes I had the ability to do that, and because they could see in real time what was unfolding and what was happening. It's a little like learning to play golf. We can read about golf. We can pick up golf magazine. We can pick up books on golf technique. And we can read, how to make contact with the ball, how to turn your hips and raise your arms in one smooth motion so that you bring the club head down at just the right angle to make solid contact and send the ball soaring into the sky. Or you can go out to the golf range and start hitting range balls, and you feel the contact and you begin to make real-time adjustments with every swing. And what you begin to learn is that in order to make the ball go up in the air, you have to hit down on the ball, which is something you can't quite conceptualize if you're just reading about playing golf. And so you begin to feel what it feels like to hit down on the ball, to be able to swing through, to create a divot after the ball and not behind the ball. And as you watch that ball soar, you begin to create muscle memories of what you've done. This is a little bit like what it's like to learn this skill, to be able to reflect or notice present process. The more you do it, the more you're able to be able to see it unfold and happen right in front of your eyes, and the easier it becomes to be able to recognize it. And when you begin to be able to recognize in real time what is happening between you and your partner, you can make real-time adjustments, just like the golf metaphor I used. You can begin to repair before there is a large rupture. And you can understand why you might interpret your partner as you do when you recognize their facial expressions feel like rejection. And when you begin to interpret that and recognize how you're interpreting that, then you can also create enough space for that interpretation to maybe not take it so seriously, but to check out, is that what my partner is intending in this moment? Or is this something that's coming up for me from a past wound? But unless you can begin to recognize in the moment how you're responding and reacting to your partner's nonverbal cues, you don't have that ability. You just simply are caught up in the moment, and you're sort of swept away with the wind and wherever it may blow, because you're not able to step back and see this process unfold. Unfortunately, there is no magic wand I can give you to make you good at this skill. I mean, even for therapists, it takes time and lots of repetition. Every therapist I know, every therapist I've ever trained, it just takes time for them to be able to recognize, to see, and be able to provide therapy on two different levels. On one level, it's the verbal therapy you're providing. On another level, it's the nonverbal that you're noticing and bringing to the couple's intention or attention. Excuse me. You're bringing to attention what's unfolding in the moment in a nonverbal way. And so even as therapists, it takes a long time to be able to get good at this skill. Now, the best I can really give you, because I was trying to think, how do I help you develop this skill? The best I think I can do is provide some questions that maybe you can begin to ask yourself as you go into interactions with your partner yourself. So here are some questions, and I'm sure you can think of some more on your own as well. So be able, to create your own questions. I want you to be able to do that. But here's some just to get you started. What is happening right now? Meaning, what is happening between me and my partner right now? It went from feeling fine to all of a sudden feeling a little bit tense. It went from, okay, my body was relaxed, to now my body seems guarded and a little defensive. It went from my partner having a soft tone to having more of a sharp tone. So what is happening right now between us? That can sometimes draw your attention to the nonverbals. Not so much what is my partner saying. You can process the words. It's the nonverbals that I want you to start trying to bring into focus more. Following up on that one is this question. What do I recognize on my partner's face or their tone of voice? And what message do I feel like they're sending? My partner just crossed their arms. What message does that send me? Are they getting defensive? Do I feel they're about to shut down? Do I feel they're only listening to the time in which they can jump in and rebuttal what I'm saying? What message is that sending me right now? Here's another question. What am I feeling in my body right now that may be sending me a warning sign? What is it that's going on internally for me that's putting me on guard myself? Our emotions are our first responders. And so just like the firemen here in the United States, when there's an emergency, usually the firemen are first responders. Usually they show up oftentimes before the police or before the ambulance. So they're what we call first responders. They're the firemen of sort of the emotions of our body, so to speak. And those feelings will resonate for us very quickly, and they cue us as to what's happening in our environment. Is things going well for us in our environment, or are things not going well for us in our environment, in our relationship with our people? And so, what am I feeling in my body right now that's sending me a warning sign, and how can I pay attention to that? And finally, what does my partner look confused, scared, sad, or mad right now? Excuse me, not what, why. Why does my partner look confused, scared, sad, or mad right now? What's that look on their face? What might be happening for them as something unfolds here beyond just the words that we're saying to each other? So asking any questions that can draw your attention to the present moment can be a good way to begin to improve this skill. What we want to try to do is to make the implicit explicit. We want to be able to try to make those things that we don't often recognize, the implicit nonverbal communications that happen between you and your partner every day, and we want to try to make them more explicit and bring them into the relationship to be able to talk about. This is a powerful, powerful tool for couples when they can learn to do this, because what happens is they can begin to catch and stop escalations of arguments way sooner, way before they become stuck, or way before they become bogged down in an argument, in a large rupture that may happen. So being able to get better at this skill as partners means that we can work things out sooner, that we can stay connected longer, and then ultimately we have fewer and fewer ruptures, and we really begin to learn how to make better and better repairs. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast today, reflecting the present process, exploring the present moment. Let me know what you think about it. Feel free to give me some feedback. You can email me through our website, www.traumafreerelationship.com. You can make comments in whatever streaming service you're listening to. I'd love to hear what you think about some of this content. And so I can try to customize. If there's something you're wanting to hear or hear more of, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for listening. I feel very privileged to have an audience for this little podcast that I've got as I try to get out all this information that I've been learning and carrying around for years. And I really appreciate you all listening. Until next time, we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to Trauma Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.